I want to present a side of Kyoto that I never saw until I had arrived and lived here for a while. The everyday character of Kyoto that's overlooked for all the other things that the city is famous for. There's been a million videos made on Kyoto's temples and shrines, so here's one about the dead fish, the empty lots, and the sinewy in-between bits that hold it all together. Perhaps you've heard of Paris syndrome, the phenomenon of visitors to the city feeling shock and even distress upon experiencing the reality of Paris, which is starkly different to the romanticised ideal they'd build up in their imaginations over years of media and publicity. What's more, it specifically affects almost entirely Japanese people. People arrive in Paris and can't get over how different the reality is to their expectations. And let me tell you, Japan is obsessed with French stuff. We all know they love putting broken English all over products and shops, but they do the same with French. Cute little cafes and bakeries are particularly fanatical in this regard. And I've always got the sense that the romantic image of France has cast a powerful spell over the nation's imagination. There's even a Europe-themed theme park called Porto Europe in Wakayama Prefecture that's just a weird amalgam of France, Italy and Spain. The whole thing is just plazas and Venetian side streets interwoven like a spaghetti dinner, cooked by someone who's heard of spaghetti, seen pictures of spaghetti, but never actually eaten spaghetti. So what's my point here? Well, now that Japan has reopened its borders to tourists after more than 2 years of restrictions, I couldn't help but worry for the mental well-being of the international community. You see, they've been dreaming about Kyoto for years. They're going to be frothing at the mouths with images of cobbled streets lined with traditional houses and giggling geiko. But there's a lot more to this city than meets the eye, and the true nature of Kyoto may be enough to push a katana-clutching, body-pillow-snuggling weeaboo over the edge and into madness. But what if, say, a plucky, handsome video maker was generous enough to make a video covering some of the unpublicised realities of Kyoto? Why, that would all but guarantee a culture shock-free experience for the globe-trotting hoi polloi. Because if a Slovakian family of 4 arrived in Kyoto and experienced mild surprise whilst I sat and did nothing, well, I don't know how I could live with myself. Look at this poor Redditor for Christ's sake. Sharing his disappointment that Kyoto was filled with functional buildings and not one big wabi-sabi themed amusement park. His blood is on my hands. I mean, yes, being serious for a second, it's a bit weird to expect that a modern city will contain 0 urban sprawl. Having said that, I do have to concede that there is some seriously weird and ugly architecture in this city. But you can say that about any big city, quelle surprise. 1.5 million people call this city home. They're not all going to live inside temples and tatami-top tea rooms, waiting for some weeb to walk in and take a photo of them all sitting around politely bowing to each other like mental patients. Kyoto has already made heavy financial sacrifices to preserve its beauty as much as possible. The government has implemented restrictions on the height of the city's buildings. The current maximum is just 31 meters tall, and it's even lower in certain areas containing historic architecture. But these restrictions have made it difficult for the city's growth potential to increase. If you can't keep building skyward, then the residential and office spaces of the city quickly reach their limit. And given the scores of tourists that have visited Kyoto in recent years, developers have turned their attention towards building more profitable sites, like hotels. So the preservation of the city's traditional areas and atmosphere comes at a cost. High-rise office towers provide lucrative property tax in other cities, but not here. And the Kyoto government is severely in debt to the tune of nearly 1 trillion yen. The mayor himself, Daisaku Kadokawa, described it as a crisis situation, with the prospect of bankruptcy within a decade. That's what's really going on behind the scenes, away from the veneer of pagodas and mossy gardens. So what urban sprawl you do encounter in the city, know that it's serving a critical purpose. There's quite a lot of it going on in my neighbourhood as it happens. These 2 huge apartment blocks tower over the rest of the neighbourhood, and do feel somewhat out of place. If you were dreaming of splendid tiled roofs over wooden townhouses, then I suppose it might snap you out of that fantasy. It would be like if you went to Venice and saw a bowling alley. Your head would be gone. It's just as well there aren't any. And for any pedants in the comment section who come at me with, oh, what about enjoy bowling Venezia? It's not in the old-timey part of Venice, so it doesn't count, okay? I did my homework on this one. I've been to Venice and there were no bowling alleys, end of story. Anyway, around the corner from those apartment blocks, there's a particularly run-down-looking street that comes out of nowhere. It's like you took a wrong turn into a bad neighbourhood in London. It's so run down in comparison to its surroundings that I was genuinely taken aback the first time I saw it. Although maybe the most curious thing is the battery vending machine on the corner, which I remain slightly perplexed by. What was it about this particular area that mandated a 24/7 supply of batteries? Meters from my front door, there's a series of metal shacks that are built along the rail line, one of which is inhabited. You can see from the laundry being put out. In fact, there are a surprising number of these around the city. I don't think they are things that need to be treated as unsightly. It's the financial reality for people living here, and I don't think the city owes it to tourists to just sweep them all under the rug. But there are some sad and quiet scenes that make me feel a little introspective at times. I've seen a surprising number of derelict buildings that have been abandoned or in the process of falling down. Then there's the empty lots and the dingy, cobweb-ridden shops that can't be making a penny, yet refuse to keel over and die, perhaps because they've always been in the family. This is a model train store that always seems to be deathly quiet. How many model trains can this guy really be selling? They've even got a sign on the door telling people that kids aren't welcome because they're not toys. Then there's this huge pile of rubbish stacked up on the pavement beside a busy main road. It's been here for years and I'm curious about it every time I walk past. Is it a hoarder? A really lazy guy? Someone who wants to share their collection of stuff with everyone? Who knows? Once you start looking for things that seem ugly or out of place, you can't stop spotting them, especially in regards to the architectural style of the buildings in this city, which really do seem to be an inconsistent patchwork. I found this odd picket fence style home on a cycle the other day. It's bizarrely out of place in this residential neighbourhood, which also features this weird concrete modern specimen, and then this, I'm not even sure what style this is. I don't dislike it, but I do feel perplexed at times. Check out this ugly box. Have you ever seen windows arranged so haphazardly? Well, that's something of a theme here as it happens. All over the place you can see these tiny asymmetrical arrangements that resemble Mondrian paintings. It may be down to building regulations that require strong, earthquake-resistant walls that aren't compromised by lots of big windows. But maybe the Japanese are not as concerned about sunlight. The great writer Junichiro Tanezaki's essay, In Praise of Shadows, discussed at length the relationship between Japanese culture and dusky interiors. It's a beautiful piece of writing, and almost quite sad for the world that he described being engulfed and destroyed by the light and electricity-obsessed culture of the West. Perhaps these gloomy buildings are a testament to his words. But then again, his writing was a celebration of darkness, tradition, shadowy aesthetics and mystery. When I look at some of these houses, I'm not entirely convinced it's what he had in mind. Or maybe the mystery part. Look at this one. At night it's like something out of a sci-fi movie. Or actually, Squidward's house. Somebody call Inspector Gadget, because this shit ain't adding up. To clarify, I'm not complaining. It's nice to see a bit of variety in a country that has a stereotype of everyone behaving the same way and being afraid to stand out. Chances are you might miss a lot of this if you stick to the beaten path and focus only on the cultural hotspots. And that's no bad thing. But whenever I visit a highly touristy city, I've always felt tempted to peek behind the curtain and get a look at the lives of everyday people there. Seeing a place without its makeup on makes a trip more memorable.
So those are the drums over there, that's what I call them, the drums. Those are all just constantly full of old metal shavings, kind of dripping with oil and gunk. And they come from that mysterious building there. I guess they're machining or something. I don't know what's going on. In the window, it's all just piled up with stuff. And the ceiling's dripping. Yeah, interesting.
You'd always remember a person if you got a good look at their insides and saw what makes them tick. Which is a figure of speech, you understand. In general, the media likes to focus on the most extreme or remarkable aspects of a place, and I think Japan is a particularly strong example of this. In media, it's usually a toss-up between, wow, the ancient and mystical lands of Japan, and robots, sumo, anime madness, wacky game shows, even though 99% of the reality is convenience store culture and outdated offices bedeviled with paperwork. Part of the motivation for setting up this channel was to provide a perspective that was less in your face about all the wacky stuff, and more concerned with the day-to-day reality of living here. And even then, maybe I've already betrayed myself by going on about silly mascots and gacha in earlier videos. Maybe it's unreasonable of me to expect that people visiting Japan for 2 weeks are going to be poking around in every crevice of the local ward office trying to make sure that they see the real Japan. After all, people come for a feeling of adventure and discovery, not to report to their friends back home that,
actually the Japanese still use fax machines,
etc., etc. No offense to anyone who actually sounds like that, Squidward. I'm reminded of my fellow countrymen in the form of those British people who go to Spain only to stay in English-speaking communities and eat British food the whole time they stay there. It's fucked up and I don't get it, but people have the right to go at their own pace. And if they want to peek behind the comforting curtain, they will when they're ready. Sometimes you just want to go and see a blockbuster without being all intellectual about it, and just switch off your brain for a while and look at some cool stuff. I myself maintain that the 2012 military sci-fi film Battleship, based off a board game and starring Liam Neeson and Rihanna, is a fantastic film. There. Now that I've sunk my credibility to the bottom of the ocean, it's time to finish. And if you are a weeb who goes off the deep end just because you saw an old Japanese man cross the road without bowing at every single car, well, maybe you deserve to go insane. Your bonus for waiting to the end of today's video sludge is this Pokemon train I saw in Naha, Okinawa. I have a bunch of footage from over there, so perhaps I'll make a video about it at some point. Keep your nose in the trough, more to come. Thank you, good night.